Serious people who have had somebody die for you. What is your story? My brother jumped in front of his wife when a maniac was trying to run them over. My brother was killed on the 15th of November 2015 in Eugene, Oregon, while on a weekend getaway. He and his wife had just finished breakfast and were walking back to their car to go back to the place they were staying. As they were crossing the road, a man in a Toyota Highlander, who had just beat his parents with a baseball bat, killing the father and permanently injuring his mother, decided to drive into my brother and his wife at full speed. According to the police reconstruction and witnesses, my brother put his body in front of his wife's and took the brunt of the impact. He was killed instantly, and my brother's body slammed into his wife, breaking nearly all her bones on the left side of her body. She lived. R.I.P. Mark J. Sanford. A truly amazing man, brother, friend, son, stepfather and husband. I'm late to the party, so many won't see this, but I wanted to put this out there. Obvious throwaway because people know my personal account, and I'm not ready to talk about it with most people. Most details are intentionally made ambiguous. The irony that I'm posting it here for everyone is not lost on me. I was in Afghanistan in 2011, working in humanitarian assistance / human terrain analysis. I was working in the southern part of a city in the southeast of the country, working in various villages / communities over the course of a few weeks. I have Middle Eastern / Southwest Asian features, so the Afghans took a liking to me. I got to know one village community particularly well, to the point that one of the younger boys, about 13, would always walk with me holding my hand, a sign of friendship in their culture. We'd talk about life in America, what his life was like in his Afghanistan, what he wanted to be when he grew up, basic stuff, nothing serious. I left that community to work in other parts of the region for a little while with the intention of coming back for one more visit before I went back to HQ to write reports and shit. So I go back for that one visit to find the community cold to me, which is very unusual in Pashtunwali. Pashtuns is the ethnicity of the people in the area. Pashtunwali is like their ethnic code of conduct. As we're leaving the area, we found the body of the kid that was hanging out with me. He was executed by gunshot and left to rot in a ditch. He didn't die for me in the sense that he sacrificed himself for my sake. Rather, he died for being my friend. The people of that community refused to speak to any NATO forces after that. Not me personally, but it did affect me. For those who live in the US, you may have heard about this, as it made national news. I used to work at an elementary school, and one day during dismissal time, one of the parked school buses suddenly jumped the curb towards a group of children. The principal was not too far behind them, and pushed them out of the way just in time, before the bus hit her, and killed her instantly. I was there when it happened. That was the bravest and most selfless thing I have ever seen anyone do, and proved her character in how passionate she was with working with children. When I was 7 years old, my mother and I got into a car accident. I was asleep in the front seat wearing no seatbelt. She saw the oncoming car approaching and threw herself on top of me, saving me from flying through the windshield, but killing her instantly. I think about her every day, and I want to live to tell her legacy. Her name was Jennifer Lee. Rwandan genocide survivor here. I lost my dad during the Rwandan genocide when I was 4 years old. He died protecting my sister, my mother, and me. The genocide was basically between two tribes, Hutus and Tutsis. My parents were each from different tribes. To make a long story short, both tribes were willing to take all of us in, but the non-verbal agreement was that the parent that wasn't from the appropriate tribe would be dealt with. Not wanting my mom to die, my dad chose to bring us to her tribe side of the conflict, thus sealing his own death in the process. He was taken to some woods somewhere, and he had his head chopped off. What always gets to me is my mom telling me how he silently cried as he was taken away. My grandfather at the time was 94 years old. My 4-year-old daughter got the flu, which she then gave to me. I was homesick with my daughter, and I couldn't even take care of myself, let alone my daughter. My grandfather took care of the both of us. I remember waking up to him covering me with a blanket, like when I was a child. He ended up getting the flu from us, and his respiratory system couldn't take it. He passed because he took care of me and my daughter, and it makes me cry every time I remember that. I tried to shorten this as best I could, but it's still crazy long, I'm sorry. October 13th, 2011, my aunt and uncle invited me to come down with them for a wedding party they were having at their house in Logan for one of their friends. I accepted, packed my stuff to stay for a weekend, and got into their car. We were just chatting while driving through Logan Canyon from my house to theirs. It was nice because I hadn't really talked to them since I moved up there. Well, all of a sudden I hear my aunt say, Steve. I look up and see a red truck right in front of us. It hits and I black out. I wake up in a lot of pain and everything smelt weird and I couldn't talk. My aunt gets out of the car and is panicking and asking if my uncle and I are okay, which I'm still surprised that she could to this day because she had a broken disc in her back. My uncle had died on impact. I learned later that he turned the car just in time to take the full brunt of everything. Something that still makes me very uncomfortable is recalling this event. I can still clearly remember him breathing, but it was gurgling and like he was trying to breathe. Apparently his brain had split in two or something. I don't know if that's a thing that can happen. I just remember being told that. I get upset thinking about it. I feel like I heard him dying. Everyone thought I walked out of there okay until a few days later my intestines burst because a portion of them had been killed. Though I walked out of the car with broken glasses and a bruised arm. Somehow no broken bones. I don't know if this information will make you feel better or worse, but if it helps you understand what was happening to your uncle, yes, you were hearing him die. It sounds like he may have been doing agonal breathing, not to be confused with any kind of agony. He wasn't awake or aware of what had happened to him or felt anything. The breathing noises he was making wasn't really breathing at all. His brain was responding to the lack of oxygen it was receiving because his heart had stopped. It's a very natural thing that happens when someone is dying suddenly, and it's awful you had listened to it happen to someone you know and love and not know what exactly was happening to him. From experience, I know how terrifying it sounds, especially when you think they are breathing and something can be done to help them. There was nothing anyone could have done to prevent him from dying, and he was very brave to have maneuvered the car the way he did. I hope you can find some peace about what happened. Thank you for the information about this. I'd never really tried looking it up, but it does help knowing he didn't feel any of it. I've posted this on other threads before, but it's a story about my dad. It was winter time. When I was 10, my father and I were walking across the ice covering the canal across from his house. I believe we were going for lunch. Before I realized what was going on, the ice broke from under us, and after some time of struggling to stay afloat, someone had finally noticed us in the water, encircled with ice. The guy threw an extension cord out to us. My dad told me to grab hold of it, and he pushed hard on me to get me up on the ice, so the guy could pull me to shore. As he pushed up on me, I looked back to see his face disappear under the water. That was the last time I ever saw him. I have been suicidal for a couple of months. When I was 21, I guess it's always been there, but some things in my life triggered it. I knew I didn't want to die, but something inside me was telling me it's the right choice and that no one really wanted me in their life. So I started to plan my suicide, without anyone knowing. Around that time, my sister-in-law got sick, and passed away right on New Year's Eve, and suddenly I got 2 small children to care for. At first, I didn't know what to do. My plans were basically changed super fast. I didn't have time to think on what just happened. But these children changed me. I started to see that yes, I'm worth something, and needed, and nothing makes me cry so much than thinking of dying and leaving these kids with more death in their life. I don't know if it counts or not, but I was basically saved by these kids and their mom. Sorry, this is another not me, but when we were 7 my best friend's mom was at a bar not far from where we grew up. I guess a guy there was getting really rowdy and the management asked him to leave. As he was being kicked out he drunkenly yelled something along the lines of "I'll come back and kill every person in this place." I don't think anyone took him seriously, but later that night he returned with a gun and opened fire on the people in the bar. Her mom ushered some of her friends into the kitchen to hide. She got them all into a pantry, but he came in and caught them. He shot her in the head and moved on to the rest of the bar. She died protecting her friends. A few weeks later, at a different bar in a different state, my friend's dad was shot and killed also. She was orphaned at 7 years old and was then raised by her grandmother. We don't talk about it very often, but on holidays like Mother or Father's Day I know I need to check in on her. My brother died for me 13 years ago yesterday. We were alone at a beach in Mexico, no lifeguards, while our dad was taking care of some business. The water had been rough the day before, but my brother wanted to take a swim, so we went in anyway. Messing around in the water with one of those disposable underwater cameras, we got distracted and didn't realize how far we'd been pulled out. Suddenly we realized we were in a rip current and how big the waves around us were. Tried to swim back, but couldn't, and at this point I'm panicking, yelling for help, and telling my brother I don't want to die. He says I won't, stays with me, and yells for help. Someone at one of the beachside restaurants finally notices us and jumps into the water with a boogie board. They swim up to us and tell us to hang on to the board. My brother and I are holding hands in the board together. One wave later and we are ripped apart. That was the last time I saw him. I live for him every day. He was and is my best friend. My mom died giving birth to me. I didn't find out about the circumstances of her death until I was 7 and my aunt said something about it to me. It messed me up for a while. I often wonder what my life would have been like if she was around. I had very little female influence in my life. I was raised by my dad and 5 brothers. Dad just treated me like one of the boys, so I grew up working on cars and motorcycles. My dad has never dated anyone since. That sometimes makes me sad too. I look at all the joy my husband brings into my life and want that for him, but I think he is just done with that part of his life. My brothers will sometimes tell stories about her. It's really the only way I know anything about her. There are some pictures around too. People tell me I look just like her and have the same attitude. I just have to take their word for it. I'm older now than she ever was. I look at all the things going on in my life and I feel incredibly guilty for taking that away from her. It makes me want to live my life in a way that I think would make her proud. My father's best friend growing up passed away before I was born, but in an absolutely heroic manner. My parents and godfather, Glenn, were rafting along the Colorado River in the early 90s. Following a large section of rapids, they decided to take a break along the shore. Shortly after, they heard screams for help from upstream, closer to the rapids. A young boy had fallen out of a raft without a life jacket on. Glenn rushed up the shore with his life jacket and jumped in the white water, swimming towards the boy. He was able to take his own life jacket off, attach it to the boy, and fasten it before he was pulled down by the current. My parents were quite distraught for some time after. They hold Glenn in a different light in their minds and decided to give me, their first son, a part of him. My middle name is Glenn. I'm very proud to have had someone like that as a direct influence on my life. We sold drugs, and let's call him Jay. I got into it to help him out, but it was my choice all the way. We were just kids. I was 15. On our days off, we posted up outside a liquor store and just hung out, talked about whatever came to mind. Maybe we had some customers pass by, put some work in, but that wasn't why we hung out there. It was quiet, nobody bothered us much, and we got to just chill. Apparently he had a reputation I wasn't aware of with some other crew, because one day I saw a car around the corner after sunset with no lights on. They didn't stop, but slowed down around the store, and I thought back, quote, alright, sketchy customer, get the bags ready. Then the window came down, and I saw the barrel stick out. I froze, but Jay was quick, got in front of me, and brought me down, while I just heard 2 shots, and then the car speeding away. I got grazed, but he got hit in his midsection, and in the head. He was a lot taller than me, so the headshot missed me completely. He didn't die immediately. I held him, and called 911. I don't remember talking to the operator. I just remember looking at him and being able to tell the second he died. It really is a lights out moment where they just aren't there anymore. I've recently learned that the name for what I did after that was called back, quote, keening, moaning or screaming in response to someone's death. I just yelled and yelled, cried, and screamed. It's been 12 years, and I'm fine now, but I keep his memory with me and realize that we put ourselves in that danger, so I take more responsibility for the situations I put myself and my loved ones in. Edit. This is my most popular post. I do appreciate the well wishes and condolences. To be politely brief, thank you all. He was a stranger. His death saved me and 3 others. The circumstance surrounding his death will never be completely known, as mistakes were made during his medical care. At the time of his death, I had already been on an artificial heart for 11 months and was probably about 2 weeks from death myself. It had been a 3-year journey for me and my family. Getting listed for transplant and then sitting on that list was grueling. I was simply done. I received his heart on the 11th of January 14. Although the recovery still goes on, I'm alive and enjoying my life. His name was Futim, and I now know his family. At the start of the year, my grandparents came home from work to get changed before dinner and found my uncle collapsed on the floor. He was declared brain dead half an hour later, and they were asked about organ donation. He was kept on life support for 3 days while the paperwork was sorted and the recipients were prepared. The second his life support was off and his body accepted that it was dead, he was whisked off to go and save lives. He never had children, but my nan seems a little happier knowing his death helped others and that at least part of her son is out there walking around, even if she hasn't brought herself to unbox his urn yet. Not the typical altruistic life-saving event, but I'll go on. I'm an identical triplet. We started out as quadruplets, but the 4th little homie took one for the team as he stopped developing sometime during my mother's pregnancy. This allowed the remaining clones to develop healthy and well, utilizing the nutrients that would have been split by 4 down to 3, pouring one out for you, maximum. Edit. There are a lot of triplets on Reddit. My mother's boyfriend died protecting her and her mother from being kidnapped in a mall parking lot back in the 80s. It was at night and they were leaving the mall when two men came up and attempted to kidnap them. My mother's boyfriend got in between them and was shot point blank in the head and died instantly. The men were caught and jailed, but I'm pretty sure they are out now. My mom and the mother of the man killed sued the mall and won because there was no lighting in the parking lot and the overall general safety of the mall was questionable before the incident. After the lawsuit, lights were installed in the parking lot for better visibility. It really affected my mom and shaped her into the person she is today, unfortunately for the worse. She has struggled with many things after the incident and was never the same. She does not feel comfortable in many situations and does not dream. She said that she had such bad nightmares afterwards that she eventually just stopped dreaming altogether. My mother doesn't like to talk about it much. From what I have been told was that she will never forget what a brain looks like. The woman who was the mother of the deceased went on to become a relative to my family regardless of her not actually being blood related. The man was her only son, so she did not have much left. She is my grandma and has helped my family out countless ways throughout the years and I love her very much. My mother became her daughter and us her grandkids. My mom went on to marry a good friend of her deceased boyfriend and that is how my siblings and I came to be. Without him sacrificing himself for my mom, I would not be here today. He died a hero and I am thankful for his sacrifice. Thank you, Ricky. Aged 11, I went to visit my sister unannounced. She didn't want me to come in, but I was upset. So she looked after me. I knew she had problems and was addicted to a drug, but I was 11. I didn't understand what a prostitute was. While I was round, the man, her pimp, started shouting at the door for her to let him in and she told me to hide in the cupboard. I did. He came in and told her to fuck him. She refused because she knew I was in the cupboard. This escalated and then he raped her and stabbed her 17 times. He left and I stayed silent in the cupboard for 7 hours afraid to come out. I was found by her housemate who was also a working girl. My father. I was assaulted when I was 9. He confronted the man that did it, beat his ass. Man came back and shot him in the head. My mother has hated me ever since, so I lost 2 parents in one day. It has affected me in the sense that I'm hypervigilant in protecting my son. I have read the thread to this and would like to make something clear. I don't blame my mother because I understand some things about trauma. I do appreciate the kind words some have offered. I'm really late to this, so this will probably be ignored, but whatever, I can answer this. When I was 16 it was just me and my dad. My mum had passed away a few years before, so my dad was raising a teenage daughter alone while trying to run a business that his heart wasn't in. My mum wanted the business mainly. One night my dad tells me that he needs to go meet a friend and that he'd be home late. This was fairly normal, so I didn't really think much of it. Off he went. That night I was woken at 4 AM to 2 police officers at the door. They sit me down and tell me that my dad's car had been found parked beside a bridge and a male body was on the road below the bridge. They told me that my dad had committed suicide. He left a note solely addressed to me that essentially vaguely said he had got involved in something dodgy and the other people had threatened to hurt me to get back at him. The only way he felt he could protect me was to take himself out of the picture. This was 8 years ago now, and I still have no idea what he was involved in or what went down. The last line of the note really stuck with me. It said, "Please make something of your life." I haven't. I've done my absolute best since that day and have managed to graduate uni and get myself a good job with well above average pay for my age. I've met an amazing guy and I'm truly happy. I obviously miss my dad every day, but he did push me to become who I am now, and I really owe him for that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more future content.